Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Here's your host, Jeff and Sean.
Hey, Cub fans. Welcome back to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. If you've been hanging around with us for the last week, you notice we pumped out a bunch of episodes previewing the NL Central, and today is the day. If you're listening, this is getting released on the morning of opening day, which means Cubs baseball is back. And today we'll be talking about the Cubs and what we think they're going to do this year, take a look at their roster, and then some ideas of what's going around in the MLB. So, Sean, how are you doing today? Thanks so much, as always, for joining me.
I'm doing great. And the real question is, how has it been in Florida?
Yeah, if you noticed, I have a healthy glow, which is generally from opening day, but this year it's actually from sun in Florida. I'm on spring break with my family. I am in the bedroom of our Airbnb, which I really want to highlight how committed I am to this podcast. And B, if you notice, I'm standing for color reference. I'm sitting in front of a white wall, which proves that I'm actually tan.
You're glowing. You're just glowing.
It's that time of year where Eastern European men go from being Casper White the Ghost to what interior decorators would refer to as eggshell, which is just a grade above white. So, yeah, it's been fun. Been having some fun with the family, and yeah, thankful for my wife to have patience with me to take some time out of our vacation to record this preview, as I can't read a calendar and did not realize we are coming home the day of opening day. So just happy to be here.
Lots of dedication out of you. I mean, people should subscribe to Bricks Behind the Ivy just for that.
I agree. I'm very biased about that, but I do want to point out this morning I did a post on Instagram and Twitter. We have had over 500 listens to the podcast. So yeah, let's do a round of applause for ourselves. Yep. Thank you to everyone who has been listening. If you want to get more from us, if you want to support us, like, share, subscribe, interact with us on Twitter. Another place that I feel like is going to be a good place that we're going to post threads for discussions on games and stats and such is our Reddit community. If you're looking for a link for that, it is Bricks Behind the Ivy on Reddit as well. So check that out. Make sure you do the reviews. Make sure you do the sharing. All that helps us grow our audience, which is going to help us push out more content. So thank you, everyone, so far. We've been doing this about 4 weeks, and we have 500 listens. So it was a grind getting that NL Central preview together, but it was definitely worth it, from my perspective, to get a really good idea of what the competition is going to look like specifically in this division, which is where I think, and we'll get into, the Cubs have the best chance of making the playoffs is by winning the division.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, we had some great guests. We'll take a quick second to thank, Ethan, David from Cardinals Live, Jake McKibben, who stayed up into the wee hours of the morning, which is not a pun to him being from Ireland, but a thankfulness of him being from Ireland and still hopping on the pod. And also we had Andy Evans, my college roommate, diehard Reds fan, come on and talk about the Reds. So thank you guys so much for coming on and making this possible. So we'll get right into it. We're going to talk about the Cubs and what we think they're going to do this year in 2024. Obviously, there has been some changes in the managerial seat. There has been some fringe roster moves, but we'll get into each specific part of the roster. Sean, do you want to lead us off? What's the Cubs lineup going to look like in 2024?
Sure. So, first, shameless plug. I wrote about the lineups on Northside Baseball, where Jeff is also a writer, and there's a lot of great shameless. And shout out to Northside Baseball. Go check out their site and all the wonderful writers out there. Just a great community of writers. So, shameless plug. But over there, I wrote about the lineup and the best way to construct the lineup. Now, Craig and I probably aren't going to see eye to eye on everything and on how to put together that lineup. But overall, I think what he's been trotting out the past couple of days is what we're going to see against right-handed and left-handed pitching. The one disagreement that I will have with him, and as we go through this, there'll be a couple more, but I really like Nico out of the leadoff spot. I mean, anytime you have 43 stolen bases, over that time span, and you hit 282 out of the leadoff spot, it seems like he is the prototypical leadoff guy. Now, Craig's been putting Hap in there in leadoff against both left-handed and right-handed hitting. And I think that's probably where he's going to end up, at least for the time being. And just full disclaimer, I mean, this is going to be fluid. We've seen Craig leave players in certain places, but he also tends to move players around depending on where the hot hand is and things like that. So followed by Nico / Hap, I have Suzuki batting second. I really think that he's going to thrive there. I mean, when you're hitting after Hap or Nico and then eventually hitting ahead of Bellinger, he's going to see a lot of fastballs. And man, can we just talk about how great of a spring he has had?
Yes.
Like,
holy cow.
My gosh. I mean, it's like he carried whatever he had in the second half of the year, which was just historic. And then taking it into spring training and hopefully just transitioning that to a full year of play in 2024. I do expect him to continue that. I mean, he hasn't showed anything where I don't think he's going to continue, that torrid, path that he's on. But the thing that really called out to me when I was going through his stats is 838 OPS and a 278 against right-handed pitching. He's going to stick there in the 2-hole, probably against right-handed or left-handed pitching. Bellinger, let's finally get him in the 3-hole. That is a huge gripe that I had with Ross last year. You got to have your best hitters hitting in the top half. Give them the most at bats. Bellinger in the 3-hole, like him in the 2-hole as well. Just makes the most sense. Morel, he's not being handed the third base job, but I really believe he's going to see most of his starts there. Career 304 hitter with a 571 out of the cleanup spot. I mean, that is shocking to me. Hitting 4, he loves it. So let's just put him there and leave him there. Hap, this is where it gets kind of dicey. If you have Hap in the 1-hole, you could put Swanson or Nico in that 5 or 6 spot. I think they're pretty interchangeable there. Busch in the 7th spot. Yeah. Looking at his minor league numbers. Oh yeah. We know Jeff loves.
That's my boy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that tweet that you sent out. Have somebody look at you the way that Jeff looks at Hot Stove Cubbies and Michael Busch. It's so true.
No, I also thought of, I don't like my Busch heavy or light. I like it, Michael. That's
oh my gosh. That's a shirt. That's a shirt.
Someone called Joe over at Avi Assurance.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh, that's great. But yeah, he's gonna hit in that 7th spot. I could see him batting, as he progresses, but right now it's all about protection for him. But you don't want to put a lot of pressure on Busch, who has a handful of at bats at the major league level, and put him in that 4th spot, where eventually I think he'll be, but 7th spot for him. Your catching tandem of Amaya and Gomes are going to hit 8th and 9th. But 9th, I think, against right-handed pitching, it's going to be Tauchman, and he's probably either going to DH or maybe spell one of the outfielders early on. Interesting fact, Tauchman is a career 282 hitter with a 372 on base percentage and a 527 slugging out of the 9 spot.
Interesting. That is really cool.
That is super interesting that he would be thriving in that 9 spot. And we always hear about the double leadoff hitter, batting 1st and 9th. I think that makes a lot of sense for Tauchman. I like that spot for him.
If there's anyone too that could take advantage of that, I think is Craig Counsell. I trust his analytical mind. I trust how he's going to construct a lineup. Obviously, he's going to be working with the front office, and the IV computer system and all the things that David Ross had at his disposal. But there definitely seems to be at least this air around Craig Counsell that he's been challenging the status quo this
Love
spring.
it.
And I think he brings just such a wide range of perspective, having been in the front office and having been so successful with, rosters that aren't necessarily complete in Milwaukee. So I'm looking forward to the lineup construction and his view on how he manages that. And that's going to be something I keep an eye on. I know that towards the end of the year last year, there was a very regular lineup for David Ross. I know that Craig Counsell doesn't necessarily have the reputation of running out the same guys in the same spot. It's just kind of this is based on a matchup and these things. So I wonder if that'll be something interesting to track, the number of different lineup combinations in 2024.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool to see where the numbers at the end of the year, like how many at bats each player gets in each spot in the lineup. I think we're going to see something drastically different because as I was going through these and looking at where players thrive in each spot in the lineup, there wasn't a lot of data for them to be moving around. I think that's indicative of, David Ross really sticking with the same players in the same spots in the same lineup, regardless if they were struggling or hot hitting. It just seemed like he was set in his ways. Nothing against Ross. I love Ross, but this is a element that Counsell's really going to bring. And I think he's going to do the same thing with against left-handed pitching. I think you could see a little bit of a different variation. Morel's not very good against left-handed.
He is not, no.
No. So I think you could see him lower in the lineup to kind of protect him. I actually have Michael Busch in my everyday lineups, even against left-handed pitching. I think you might see a little bit of a rotation with the DH. You're going to see, you're going to see Cooper in that DH spot likely. But I think I want to leave Busch in there because, he was hitting against left-handed pitching in spring. Let's just see how he does. Let's just throw him out there. And if he starts struggling a little bit, give him some time off against that tough left-handed pitching. The other thing that I wanted to call out is Gomes it has a career 813 OPS against left-handed pitching. So you're going to see him probably jump up into that 7 or 6 spot, even though I really like him in 8 and 9. But yeah, overall, I think Craig's got a lot to mold with this lineup. Especially when you look at some of their bench players. Cooper, I'm a huge Cooper fan. I called out that he was going to be on the 26-man roster and that he's not going to relinquish it. I think he had injury issues last year, has had some up and downs, but this spring he's looked really good, to the point that, they demoted Mervis. They're picking Cooper over a potential of a Canario being there. Dom Smith, off the roster. So I really expect big things for Cooper. And then Mastroboni, Amaya, and Madrigal is the wild card that I didn't consider because I thought he was going to open the season on the IL. Good to see him back out there. He's probably a good defensive replacement for Morel later in games. I think that's more of his role, or if somebody just needs somebody to just make contact late in games, I think makes a lot of sense. But that's your lineup. That's your bench. Jeff, you have anything for me? Any questions? Anything that I say wrong, or you want to hold my feet over the fire on?
No, I think this team is looking very similar in one capacity in the names that you're going to see every day. There's not this big, sexy new addition to that lineup, but I think one thing that I'd like to point out to the general fandom and folks who are listening is last year the Cubs had well below major league average production from first and third base. And that has been addressed. Maybe not in a splashy name, maybe not in the way that fans would like to see in a marquee player, no pun intended, on the marquee network. no free ads. But there is upside in Bush. I like that he was an advanced hitter. Hopefully he can kind of stick at first base. I also like another left-handed bat for this lineup. I like the trade in which they went and got a guy that was blocked from a very good system, didn't pay a huge premium, some younger prospects that went over. Well, we'll see how in the long run that ends up helping or hurting the Cubs, but I like the move. I like to give the kid a chance to win that job, lefties and righties. I am interested in how Council will manage Bush's at bats. I think that Major League Baseball is a confidence game. Baseball is a confidence game. So
Yep.
do you put him in those righty matchups to let him feast and then start putting him in lefty matchups, or do you just have him start every day? These are the types of things that I think Council has done so well in his career, and he's done well with Milwaukee, that I'm very excited for the management of that roster. But yeah, I think if you're looking up and down, first base is the first and third base are the biggest changes from last year, with Morel getting an opportunity to get that job, with Jed Hoyer recently kind of making comments that it's a fluid situation, so it doesn't
It
seem
is.
they're necessarily sold on Morel being there. It will be interesting if he does struggle defensively. Do we see someone from the minors, an advanced hitter that was drafted fairly recently, that a lot of Cubs fans are drilling
Who
over?
fits? Who fits that profile?
Yeah.
Shades of David Wright minus the injuries. Gosh, somebody like that would just be great to have over there at third.
David Wright comp is brave, but big if true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that you hit all the things that I want to talk about. Garrett Cooper, I think the things that are improved, that the positives are Cody Bellinger is back. He will be in
Yes.
center. He can transition to first if needed, if PCA really starts banging on the door. And first and third base should hopefully be at major league average production, which will raise the floor of this offense that was pretty solid last year in scoring runs. So I'm looking forward to that. I think the negatives are there is still potentially not that bat that everybody fears, and we're still looking for Seiya to put a full season together like his second half, which this spring has been indicative that he might be able to do that, stay healthy, be a really good bat. And then you kind of have that middle part of the lineup of Seiya Bellinger. That raises the floor of this offense significantly. So I'm looking forward to that. And obviously we're still going to get nickels and dimes at the middle. Great defense. So that'll help. That'll help, kind of on the run prevention side lineups wise. So I am optimistic Cubs fan over here.
Yep.
I'm optimistic that this is an improved lineup. The bench is better than last year. It's not bogged down going into the season by needed starts for Eric Hosmer, a very cold
my
Trey
gosh.
Mancini. There's Seiya's not starting the year on the injured list. Knock on wood. We still have a few days. Yeah, I am feeling much better about this lineup, which I think is a great segue into our next discussion, which is the rotation and the bullpen. The rotation looks very similar, minus Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman is the biggest departure from last year. That is a pretty solid concern that I believe Dave from Cardinals_Live brought up. He is one of those guys that consistently puts out a decent number of innings. Ironically, for the Cubs, he only averaged 137 innings per year, where in his career he's averaged 195, which is a lot of innings. That's a classic innings eater, and he's got a heavy sinker, ground ball pitcher. That's a lot of innings to replace. The Cubs obviously went out and got Shota Imanaga, which they're hoping, can take some of that burden, and it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. It'll be interesting how they manage him in Japan, in the MPB, in the leagues that they've played in. They rest their guys differently. They pitch once a week. It is an adjustment. There's a cultural adjustment for him as well. The Cubs have been able to manage him with Seiya Suzuki, so he does have, a point of reference. The Cubs have a good reputation of helping the players adjust. So I'm looking forward to seeing Shota Imanaga. I do love that he's getting the opening day start. He is
Yeah, that's fun.
the
That is
first
so much
pitcher
fun, man.
to make their Cubs debut on opening day at Wrigley. So it's a very exciting thing for him. I love the idea, and this is him being a fly ball pitcher and the concern about the home runs, having him start at Wrigley when it's going to be cold, in which fly balls aren't going to really go anywhere. Let him get comfortable in this game. Let him get comfortable at home, right? The energy of the fans, and eliminate the fly ball concern by making it just cold as all hell and not
Yeah.
seeing the ball travel. So I really love that. So the rotation is going to look like this on opening day. Obviously, there'll be one name we'll mention that is not going to be Jameson Taillon is going to start on the injured list, which is frustrating because I was very much hoping he's going to have a bounce back year. Seems like it's a minor setback. Looks like he's going to be back in the rotation hopefully by the end of April. That seems to be the target, mid-April. But I very much think he's a good part of this rotation. I know that there was a very rough start last year, but I don't think that's indicative of the type of pitcher he is. But
No
opening
way.
day, the first series is already lined up. We've got Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks, and Jordan Wicks, which I really like to see all three of those guys right away. Justin Steele, obviously, hopefully, is the win day guy we all think he is. We had that little scare with his knee contusion.
Where his bracket was busted, but his knee is fine.
Yeah, correct. Yes, he won Twitter. He did a very good job that day.
Yes.
But yeah, we have Steele, Hendricks, Wicks, and then we're lining up with Imanaga and Assad for those first two games at Wrigley, with Steele taking that last one in the opening series. So Imanaga has had a pretty solid spring. I've liked the K rate. He's at an insane 46.3% strikeout rate. He still is having some problems with the fly balls. He's given up a significant amount of fly balls this spring versus ground balls, but that K rate will play. He's in his MVP numbers, he's around that 25%. Major league average is at 22.7% last year. So above average. That swing and miss, not necessarily sexy swing and miss that I was looking for, but swing and miss that this rotation is desperately missing. So I'm very optimistic of what he can bring to the rotation. Kyle Hendricks obviously had some solid starts this spring, and he had his last two kind of touch-ups. The back end wasn't great, lost some command. He's a guy that really needs that command, but he's a veteran. He's using this opportunity to work on stuff. He had talked about how he was working on mechanics more than he was working on sequencing and such. So I trust Hendricks. I trust what he brings to the table. I know he's not what he was, but I'm hoping for the best with him, hoping he can lock this down. So I think the strengths of the rotation is obviously Justin Steele. Last year at 173 innings pitched, which was a career high by a long shot. He is going to probably be asked to pitch just as much or a little more this year. I think there's probably some focus this offseason on endurance, longevity, and what a full major league season looks like. He definitely looked gassed towards the end of the year. I know there's been some comments by some other baseball pundits of, was the end of the year people figuring him out, or is the end of the year he was tired? And I'm going with tired. I just
Yeah.
I think he looked gassed. The zip wasn't there. He didn't look like the same guy.
Didn't
And
look
they
like
were
he was tipping his pitches, because I remember that comment, and I've watched some things, and it's just like, I mean, to figure Kyle Hendricks out, I mean, you know how he's going to pitch it regardless. I mean, he's the same guy that it's always been. The problem is that you just don't know if he's going to be painting that outside corner and you're not going to be able to get it, or if he's going to be that guy that is a little tired, a little wore down, and can't locate his spots. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Kyle.
Yeah, and I think Steele, he is a ground ball pitcher. This is a defense that hopefully will turn a lot of ground balls into outs. He was over 50% ground ball rate in his career. Last year he's at 49.5, so around average. And this spring, Obviously, small sample size alert. He's in the 60 percentile with an uptick in his strikeout rate. He's around major league average in strikeouts, which is which is fine. He has that unique Mississippi fastball. We all talk about it on the Cubs Twitterverse. He is a gamer. I really like what he has turned into. Very excited about him. The Cubs have more depth in the rotation too this year, which I am excited about. Where I think, in one hand, if you're looking at the depth, that's great, but we are trying to make up the innings of Marcus Stroman, which he did get injured last year. He got injured the year before. So, but that's still 130 innings you're looking at. The Cubs have Smiley. They have Horton waiting in the wings. Tyon's going to come back. They're starting the year with Wicks and Assad. One of those guys is going to be able to shift to the bullpen. So there's kind of some mix and match that's going to be able to go on. But I feel like there's a majority of major league quality arms. Really disappointed Cade Horton got hurt. I really, not sorry, Cade Horton. Oh my God. Caleb Killian. I'm really disappointed he got hurt. I thought he looked great. Really wanted to see what he could bring to the table this year. But that definitely hurt the depth a little bit, hurt the options. I'm not sure he'll be seen as a starter, but Ben Brown is going to get some innings, maybe in the rotation, more likely in the bullpen. But the
looked really good. Looked really good in the last couple of spring starts. My gosh, and he's tall. He's like what, 6'6"?
Yeah, he's a big guy, and he's got some. It looks like he's got some zip. The breaking ball's great. That's a nice little pickup the Cubs got. I believe he was acquired in a trade with the Phillies, wasn't it, with David Robertson?
David Robertson, yep.
Yes. The weaknesses of this rotation, something I've said on every preview podcast, strikeouts. I worry about a rotation that can't strike out a ton of people. Like I said, major league average is 22.7%. Steal, he's at a career 24.6, so slightly above average. Last year in 2023, this pitching staff put together a 22.6% strikeout rate. So they're like right at that average level. Adding some of the guys they did in the bullpen is going to make that creep up, which we'll go over the bullpen in a second. But still not the dominant rotation arm that I feel this team needs. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery is still out there, but he doesn't solve the strikeout problem, but he solves an innings issue. But he's another lefty arm. I know there's concerns about too many lefties, but I don't see the fit in this rotation for Jordan Montgomery, given the type of lefties the Cubs already have in this rotation. He's looking for a longer term deal. And I think the Cubs really want to leave some of these slots open for some of their young starting pitchers to get an opportunity. So I just don't think that's going to happen. And I guess one other thing I want to point out, not to be the doomsday, but when Justin Steele got hurt the other day, what do the Cubs do without Justin Steele? That rotation immediately becomes,
below average,
solid. They've got guys who can pitch innings, but they don't.
They don't have that. I think
and that's terrifying. So there's a definite weakness of the rotation. Do you have any thoughts on guys you're looking forward to seeing or concerns about the rotation before we move to the bullpen?
Imanaga is the guy that I'm slowly falling in love with, especially after the spring and stuff, and him starting to work more up in the zone with his fastball was really encouraging. I think you touched on my fear. I think they have good depth in the rotation, but they don't have guys who have major league experience for that depth that could potentially step up if something happens to a Justin Steele. They don't have that guy. I mean, you can point to and say Cade Horton or Ben Brown that could step in and maybe have that high ace, upside, but they don't have the innings. Yeah, you can get innings from other guys, but there's a wear down factor, and it was really scary seeing that scene because I'm like, oh, here we go. That's the pessimistic Cubs fans coming at me. Oh no, here we go. We dodged injury bullet and then this happens. But overall, I'm okay with the rotation. I would have loved to see a strikeout pitcher get picked up by the Cubs. Snell was kind of an option, but I just don't think that front office is in level with the walk rate on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm cool with the rotation. I think it looks pretty good. I can't wait to see what Assad has. Excuse me. I think he's let's see how he does in his starts, and then once Tyone comes back, who's getting shipped to the bullpen, who's going to be taken out of the bullpen and likely put in Iowa. So that's probably a good segue into your bullpen conversation.
Sure, and kind of talking about the bullpen, on the 40-man roster to think about rotation arms, the Cubs have Daniel Palencia, Keegan Thompson, and Hayden Wesneski as guys on the 40-man. Sorry, and then Ben Brown and Michael Arias.
Mm-hmm.
So not a huge confidence boost of guys that can, start. Hayden Wesneski is going to go to the minors and continue to work on different components. He has started in the past. Still looking for him to kind of find whatever he had when he first was pitching for the Cubs. He was incredible. Keegan Thompson has thrown multiple innings before, so maybe he can be an opener at times. But yeah, that rotation depth is just different. So the bullpen is another interesting thing. I think on one hand, I had thought that it had significantly improved, but on the other hand, I think it's a very solid unit that has the same kind of concerns I have about the rotation. So we're rolling opening day with Hector Neris, Yancy Almonte, Drew Smiley, Jose Cuas, Adbert Alzolay, Julian Merriweather, Mr. Leiter Jr., and Luke Little. That is a pretty solid group. I like Luke Little. Mm-hmm. He's looked very dominant. He's tall, lefty. He's got sharp breaker, good velocity. Merriweather's your strikeout guy. Alzolay's going to be the closer. Cuas with control is a pretty solid relief piece. Looking for Yancy Almonte to use that velocity to be a key piece of the bullpen. Hector Neris has not been super solid this spring. There's been some snarky Twitter comments about no wonder he was available. He is a veteran, I'm sure. I just don't take spring numbers super seriously. There's so many factors of who they're facing, what they're working on, etc. Yep. And some of these guys, especially these, veterans, they've been this isn't their first rodeo. No. They know what they need to work on to get ready. So I like this group. I like that Luke Little's in there, adds another lefty besides Drew Smiley. So that has been something the Cubs have been looking for. I know Jose Cuas has been able to effectively get out lefties as well. Adbert, I do like him in that closer role. He brings a lot of energy.
Play the damn song.
Correct. Yeah, he's an obvious shirt. He is a great tweeter. I really like that for the back of the bullpen. He doesn't have the strikeout rate you would think he should have. He's about at 26%. You'd think for a closer it'd be a little higher. We'll see as he grows in the role if that's something that goes up. There's still obviously the potentials. The stuff is nasty for Daniel Palencia. He has just not really put together at the major league level. Hopefully he can figure that out. Ben Brown, as we talked about, another guy that's nasty. He's on the 40-man. Keegan Thompson, I think that's such an interesting concept. He's not a concept, he's a person, but it is funny to me, and I think a lot of Cub fans would agree. In 2023, going into that season, going into the offseason before 2023, I had pretty much penciled in Keegan Thompson as this elite back-end 2-inning, Josh Hader shuts down, shortens the game.
You and me both, brother. You and me both.
And just injuries and ineffectiveness and control. I don't know the entire story there, but he has not been the same guy. It is very depressing. If he can find it, that'll be a nice 40-man weapon for this team. Don't need to remove anyone from the 40-man to use him. Having him be able to go up and down with options. Very interested in how, if he can find it at AAA. He definitely struggled at Iowa at times last year when they were trying to get him right. So the one thing about this bullpen, the strength is it's deeper than it was last year. There's more options. There's more major league quality options. They did a better job of addressing it this offseason than last offseason. The thing that I would say I'm worried about with the bullpen is Anthony Castrovince over at MLB.com just put out an article of the top 10 bullpens in baseball. And the Cubs are tied for 10th on that list. So they're a very well received, well rounded bullpen by major league writers. The interesting part is the entire division, besides the Reds, are on the top five. So the Brewers, the Pirates, and the Cardinals, which, I had not really put together how good that Cardinals bullpen was until we had talked to Cardinals Live.
Agreed.
They're all in the top five, and they have some legitimate weapons. We know the Pirates have David Bednar and added Aroldis Chapman, and they have some nasty stuff around that. And the Brewers have always been able to put together good bullpens. They still have some guys with some elite velocity back there, and the Cardinals have the Ryan Heisey as closer, and they added, Kittredge and a few other guys that, I think the Cubs were looking at that I would have liked to have added. And it's just, it does make me feel like this bullpen isn't as strong as our competitors, but it's not a weak point of the team. It's not, we're talking top third in baseball. There's still opportunities. We know opening day rosters versus final version rosters are completely different. So there's opportunities to improve this group, but also they are more solid out of the gate than they were in 2023.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add. I think you hit on a lot of important points. That was I had not heard that the whole NL Central bullpens were in the top there. That's a little concerning.
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's the bullpens, all of them in the top 10, and then top prospect lists. Teams with the most top prospects, most of the NL Centrals in the top five,
Yep.
top farm systems. So this is a division that I think is on the rise, which, we'll get into in some of our discussions later in the podcast on how we feel about the Cubs as a whole and projections, but really just kind of highlights the Cubs needing to use their financial might to really separate themselves from a division that seems to have built farm systems and are all ready to compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with that, there is we want to look at prospects to watch and possibly contribute to the major league race major league this is why we don't do it live.
If we did do it live, though, people would give us a break. The fact that we're going to release this in the recording, I think they're going to be embarrassed for us.
But anyways, prospects to watch and contribute at the major league level. There we go. Pronunciation.
Unique New York. Unique.
So for this, I am not going to cheat and pick prospects that have had major league experience already. So sorry, no Michael Busch on this list, Jeff. So there's really 3 players that I see that could have a potential impact in 2024. Matt David Wright Shaw. I really feel like he is. I know. I'm going to bang that drum until I'm right or wrong, one way or the other. And I expect everybody that's watching this call me out either way.
I'm going to clip this, and then when he's amazing, I'm going to share it. When he's terrible, I'll only share it to you out of respect.
Oh, thank you. But really, it's going to be interesting. I don't think they've dictated where he's going to start the season. I'm assuming it's going to be Double-A, unless Jeff, you can. Have you heard where he's going to start the season?
I have not. I'm using our research team, that is Google, to see if that has been decided. But I don't think they've finalized the rosters.
Yeah, and so I think maybe he starts in Double-A and then gets a quick call up to Triple-A in May. If things aren't going well at third base, let's just hypothetically look at it from a pessimistic point of view. Let's just say things are not going well at third base with Morel, with Madrigal, and Wisdom when he finally joins back with the team. The only backups that you really have outside of those is Mastroboni. I mean, you have David Bodie, who's not on the 40-man roster, but wouldn't you want to pull the trigger, especially if Shaw's really doing well in Double A and then eventually Triple A? Wouldn't you want to pull the trigger and bring him up? Because, got to be honest, his bat sure looks ready. And if he's doing well defensively and the others are struggling, I think that that's the move that has to be made. So I see Matt Shaw making a impact on the roster at some point in this year, unless Morel is doing really well and Shaw is struggling a little bit, then you might not see it. But he's one of the guys that I have at the top of the list that could contribute there. We've already touched on Ben Brown. I think he could be up as a relief pitcher or starting pitcher, depending on how things shake out. Again, we touched on how big the dude is. I mean, 6'6", and a high arm that blows by hitters, 94 to 96, has that power curve, sitting in the mid 80s. Very valuable arm that's going to be in Iowa, waiting in the wings, and he's on the 40-man roster. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be called up quickly. Injury happens, he's going to be up. I think he proved it this spring. He's going to be really fun. And it's going to be fun to watch him in Iowa because that's where I'm based out of. If anyone doesn't know, I'm based out of a suburb in Iowa. So I'm going to be catching a lot of Iowa Cubs game. Bricks behind the Ivy might be on site at a Cubs game. So that's going to be fun.
Big if true.
I know. And then the last guy is Cade Horton. I mean, how can I not mention him? I mean, he has ace upside. Every time I look at him, I know this is going to sound really weird. I see Mark Pryor, and not necessarily like mechanics or anything like that. You're ducking and you're about ready to get sick. But I know I keep on picking guys who were injured over their careers.
Your homework for our next podcast is to find guys who don't have career-ending injuries as comps.
Oh man. But no, he's just a guy that's coming up through the minors. He's looking awesome. Easy 95, touches 98, great spin rate. I think he is a guy that might make a significant impact on the roster this year. I expect him to probably get added to the 40-man, especially if the injuries come, and we know they come and go. So he's the guy that I'm really excited to watch. I think he has ace level stuff. And we could talk about all the prospects in the Cubs minor league. He's the one that I have highlighted, bullet point. He's the guy that I think is going to make a huge impact on this Cubs team, possibly this season and in seasons. So those are the prospects that I have. Also, I felt like it was cheating if I used Shotei Imanaga, considering he hasn't had any kind of major league service. But obviously we touched on him, and I really feel he's going to be great for the Cubs. Do you have anybody that you're thinking of, Jeff? Any prospects that you would like to call out and worth watching or think might have an impact on the roster this year?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in Owen Casey.
Dude, yeah.
He's a top 3 prospect. He's hit some big home runs, obviously, late in spring training games. He looks pretty solid. He's a number 47 prospect, 3 in the Cubs system, just behind, I would say the top tier Cub prospects. Pundits believe Pete Crow, Armstrong, Cade Horton, the top 2 Cub prospects in the system, both arguably top 25 in the majors. He's an interesting guy, and I think it'll be fun to watch where he plays on the field. Do they try him at first base in the minors? There was some talk of that this offseason. He is an outfielder by trade. We've discussed in past podcasts, this outfield is pretty locked up for the Cubs. We have Ian Happ on an extension, Seiya Suzuki on a multi-year deal. Obviously, the open spot is center field with the opt-in or opt-out of Cody Bellinger, opt-out likely coming. But, that's PCA's spot to really lose. So Owen Casey, there's not an obvious spot for him on the team, but the bat seems really solid. So I'll be interested to see where he plays on the field and if how the Cubs feel about him. Is he the big piece that's dangled and a deadline move? What is Owen Casey going to be for this squad? And the other one that I would say it's very similar situation on where would he play. I haven't given up on Brendan Davis. I talked about this in an earlier podcast episode. I believe episode 2, for those who are tracking. This is episode 8. I talked about Brendan Davis. Obviously, had the injury. He's going to start at AAA. Doesn't seem to be super major. I like the guy. I like to see the guy stay healthy. I still believe in the bat. I think his kind of gap-to-gap power plays super well at Wrigley. Just where is he going to play another situation? He's a right-handed hitter on a team that might need more lefties, but it's definitely an option for this team if things health-wise fall apart. Would like to see him get some run. But beyond that, I think there is a lot of excitement to be watching the minors this year for the Cubs. The major league team should be competitive, and the minors do have a lot of guys to keep an eye on as, this roster kind of turns over. Turns over is not correct, but we had that big cliff in talent after, as we headed into 2021 and the sell-off, and this farm system obviously is a top 5 in baseball now. Credit to Jed and the work to do that. And there is a lot of potential in guys that aren't even in the top 100 list that could break into that. And there's lots of podcasts and folks in the Cubs world that do track the minors a lot heavier than we do. And it's something we're going to probably take a look at as the regular season goes on. But definitely, if you are near a minor league affiliate, worth taking a look, see what the future looks like. South Bend, great place to go, great place for a game. Iowa, I haven't been, but Sean, obviously, I've heard great things about going to Iowa.
Great.
I've been to Myrtle Beach, very fun. Got to see Moises Palestros when I was down there, which was really cool. He's just a really good hitter, advanced bat. Hopefully, he can stick a catcher. That's a guy that I'll be watching through the minors this year, and obviously the Tennessee Smokies. So just lots of opportunities with guys that are in the top 100 list are going to be playing at these locations, and it's always fun to be like, I saw this guy before he was this. So definitely a good prospect group to look at. So with that being said, we are going to shift to Cubs projections. We're going to talk about how we feel this team is going to do this year. And I think we will start with that discussion. And I put together kind of a fun over-under game for us to play. I already know all the questions. Sean, you do not. You're going in blind.
Yes. What could go wrong?
Exactly. So that'll be a fun part. But, I kind of will get started on how I think the Cubs sort out this year. Cardinals_live, David, who was our guest in our last NL Central preview, said something on the podcast. It's kind of been, ringing in my ear that the Cubs are very good at everything, but they're not great at anything. And I think that really just sums up this team super well. They're a very solid team around the edges, which I don't know if this is a rabbit hole I necessarily want to go down right now, but it really does make me frustrated that there wasn't a little more aggressive move to elevate this roster, use the might of being a big market club to really separate yourself from the pack and make one of these sections great. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that go into that. Takes 2 partners to tango. Maybe the Cubs didn't find what they were looking for. The market this year has been so interesting with how slow it was. Did that affect what was going to get done? Some of the early season rumors before going into the winter meetings about the Cubs with Bo Bichette and Shane Bieber and, discussions with the Rays. Are these things that our groundwork is laid because, this is a division that's very much in reach. It's the Cubs team that has a very solid floor. They can raise that number by doing these moves in the middle of the year, but the fear is that you didn't do enough to survive the trade deadline to
Exactly.
be competitive. So I think all in all, this roster, a lot of folks say on paper is very similar to last year, which is, I think, a fair statement mostly. I look at third base and first base as huge improvements, and huge improvements literally is major league average. That is how bad the Cubs were at first and third
Yeah.
base. So
I think
I,
people just kind of gloss over that state that the roster has not improved. I mean, I think it's a very similar roster as you stated, but first and third have dramatically improved.
yeah, we don't
So,
even
yeah.
need my future boyfriend Michael Busch to even be that good. He just has to be average, bring some slugging, and be a solid defensive. We're registered at Sex Fifth Avenue and Target. I'm just kidding. No free ads, but Christopher Morel, I am not. Ooh, here we go. I'm not worried about the defense. He's an athletic guy. I think we're going to see some ugly routine plays. I remember very much so the Aramis Ramirez experience at third. He was a solid third baseman a good chunk of the time, and then there were some times where it was scary. But
Yeah.
he brought incredible offense. He is one of the. It'll be interesting the discussion around him being a Hall of Fame player. He's got some very solid numbers. He's a very good player. He produced for a very long time in an era that is challenging with all the steroids. So like I feel like some of these players that were very very good kind of get raised up because they don't have the same steroid questions that other players have. But I do feel like there's a solid comp there. And even like the batting stance to me, where he holds his hands, like he kind of has that Aramis like little float that he had, and the power and kind of the energy. But yes, there were times the defense was not great. I think of a dropped fly pop up in the infield that lost them a game. In I want to say that was 2007. That sticks out in my head like a sore tack poking my brain. But there's I think he's going to be solid over there. The over under for this
So
team is
hold on, Jeff.
sure.
If did I hear you right? Did you say that Christopher Morel is the next Aramis Ramirez? I think that's what I heard. Right? Should we
Well,
mark the tape?
we could do that. I mean, at least he's healthy. I had a healthy comp. That's a
Oh, I'll take that. Ow! What is that? Is that a knife on my back? Thank you.
Here, I'll help you pull it out. But the over under for this team from betting pundits, no free ads, is 83.5. And last year the Cubs went into the season at a 79 win projection. So not a huge improvement, but it is this tale of a team that went around the edges and improved the group. And the idea that they're not great at anything, I think, is a solid thing for reducing the likelihood of this team completely falling off the wagon.
Yeah.
But and that's, as Cardinals Live had said, you're gonna have to come in pretty hot to beat them, because they're gonna bring in like a very consistent product every night, and that is good news. I think consistent product is fine. It's not sexy. It's not the Braves offense, which is insane. It's
Yeah.
not the Dodgers lineup, that has almost every jersey in the first four is an all-star player and a top-selling jersey. That's not what this is. But they're a very solid team in a division that no one took ownership of. So on the 83.5, I'm going to take the over. And I think that there is opportunity to address the rosters on the edges. I am worried that they will continue to operate as that first CBT threshold as being a hard cap and will not take on salary at the trade deadline, which just is unacceptable. If you're competing
No.
for this division. That is a
You pay
completely,
up.
yeah, that is a non-starter. You are a large market club. I don't want to hear it. That is not an acceptable answer. It just isn't. There's no beating around the bush. That's probably the most stern as a diehard Cub fan that I'll ever be about this team. That is not acceptable. That if this team has a chance to make the playoffs and there's opportunities to improve this roster and you have to take on salary, that is what you're designed to do. So
Yep.
do it. And as we had a conversation earlier, it will be interesting to me on how this front office is perceived. If this team does not make the playoffs, Jed Hoyer should probably lose his job. And
Yeah.
if he doesn't, it'll be because there is some sort of prospect development that they're going to point to that he built this system. But is that going to be enough for a Cubs fan to say, hey, like we took another year of great prospect development and we're going to potentially go into another offseason where we're hesitant to give out the big dollar deal to chase down a star? That I just don't think that's an acceptable way to behave in a division that is clearly most of the teams are trying to improve the way that you're improving, but you have the ace in the hole of having the ability to do that and spend money.
Yes.
So that I'm going to take the over because they can address this roster, but I think if they do not make the playoffs, there are some serious questions and some great podcast content to
Yeah.
have after the season is done.
So, Jeff, you said something that it just kind of, put a light bulb on. What Jed and the front office, I'm going to put Carter in this as well, is what they're doing by putting this opening day lineup is they feel like they've done enough to make it to the playoffs. By the Cubs not making it to the playoffs this year, I feel like that's saying what you did not work. It did not work. You did not spend money that you have to make this roster better. I think that is, and it's negligence, in my opinion, that if you go into, it's fine. If you have faith in this roster, I have faith in this roster. I think this is a playoff roster. I do. But if that doesn't happen and you add on top of it, or you're not adding at the deadline, then you have to look at making a change at the top. You have to look at that. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. For my wins, let's go back to being optimistic. Let's be a little optimistic here. So I think that, a lot of people are like, wow, look at that gauntlet to start the year. I think it's a good opportunity for the Cubs to show who they are by taking on some of the top talent. The other thing that's a little bit of incentive is, my gosh, the rash of injuries in the Central right now. They can come out of the gate and take advantage of that right away. You can't win in in March and April and May, but you can certainly lose. So they can really, hit the ground running. I like overall I like the roster. Yes, they could have added to it. I think this is an 84 win team as is. Now, having said that, I do expect them to add at the deadline, and I do expect them to be in contention at the deadline. If they don't, I think fans are going to have pitchforks and light things on fire. And I think they're going to end up adding to the roster one way or another. There's going to be needs that are going to be identified throughout the year, and I think that's a valuable thing to go into the year with. But I think with a few additions, this team is an 86 plus team win. I think they're 84 right now. I think adding a couple of players at the deadline, they're 86 plus. And I think that with that, they're going to win the division. We've always said 84, 85 wins the division. If they get to 86, that's a win. So I'll take the over.
Yeah, I think all your comments are fair. I think, yeah, there's a deeper conversation after this year after all the cards have been played of what this year means. But going into this season, we're being sold this is a playoff team. I will be measuring them as being a playoff team,
Mm-hmm.
and not being a playoff team is a failure. So, with that being said, welcome to Candid Cubs Over Under Game, starring Candid Cubs and Hot Stove Cubbies. I will be your host, game show Jeff, and
Happy to be here, Jeff. Happy to be here.
All right, so I put together some over-unders of some interesting things that I found on specific players, and I will not play since I already did the research.
Okay.
But I will ask you, and if you are at home, we will put together a thread on the Reddit page, shameless plug, and you can play along with us. So, the first one, Nico Horner. He put in a lot of off-season work, as discussed, to elevate the ball a little bit more, get more line drives. So, with that being said, and knowing he's got some sneaky gap-to-gap power, really good contact hitter, he had a career high of home runs in 2022 of 10. Last year, he hit 9. So, with this improved work, I have set the line at 10.5 home runs for Nico Horner in 2024. Do you think he is over or under that?
Considering that it looks like Hap is going to be in that leadoff spot, he's going to be a little further down in the order. Might give him a little more incentive to hit for power, so I'm going to take the over. That's a real tough one, but I'll take the over.
I like that answer. I think when my argument against where you would put Nico in the lineup, I like his situational hitting, his lack of strikeout rate. So putting him in like kind of the middle with some guys on and being able to kind of push the ball somewhere and getting that opportunity to drive some runs and hit those line drives and such. I hope he takes kind of another step. He's a very solid offensive player. He's an extremely good defensive player. If he can take another step with the bat, that would be big for this team.
Oh, yeah.
So, moving on to number 2, Julian Merriweather. Just a revelation to the 2023 Cub bullpen. He had a career high 72 innings pitched in 2023. David Ross rode him like genuine. Like, that was his pony.
Yeah.
And he had a 32.3% K rate, which is excellent. That's a top end K rate. So, given Craig Counsell is involved and a little more depth in this bullpen, I am setting his innings pitched, which there is very little reference considering he has had a lot of injuries. I'm setting the line at 61.5 innings pitched. Do you think he will be over or under?
I'm going to take the under on that. I know it's a big drop off from last year, and there is a little part of me that knows that Counsell he's like, Hater, you're pitching 2 innings today because we need you to pitch 2 innings, so that's in the back of my mind. But the depth in the bullpen, I think it's going to allow for a little more situational use there, and especially with guys being on that train between Iowa and Chicago too for the bullpen. Yeah, I'll go ahead and take the under. I thought you were going to say under 70, and I was like, that's easy, but you had to come out with like 61.5. I was like, come on. I'll go ahead and take the under.
Yeah, I think the health is definitely a concern I have, but I think, Counsell and the bullpen bus or whatever, the minor league bus that goes on for on road games so guys can be called up, sent down because of injuries. I think the Cubs will probably manage that a little bit better. They have a little more depth there. So I'm hoping it's the under. 61 isn't an unreasonable number for a bullpen pitcher, but I would like to see him deployed less. Really, that's what I was going for. Ooh, excuse me. In that over under. Ooh, wow. There we go. All right, our next one, and we have just 2 more after this one.
Okay.
Adbert Alzolay. Play the damn song.
Song.
He took over the closer role. I would say probably mid-year. It wasn't immediate, but he became, kind of a fun part of the end of the game. A lot of energy, obviously has that wipeout slider. He had 22 saves and 25 opportunities in 2023. In baseball, the top 10 closers all had 33 plus saves. So I'm setting the line for Adbert saves at 33.5. Does he enter top closer saves area this year?
I do. That's the over.
Okay.
If I'm predicting the Cubs to win 86 games, a lot of that's going to be leaned on Adbert. And keep in mind, he has that closer swag. I think that should be a shirt. Closer swag.
That is a good one.
Just like one of those guys that you look and you're like, that guy's a closer. I mean, he has that wipeout pitch. And he's going to get a lot of save chances. Let's look at this team as a whole. They're going to be playing in some close games. He's going to get a lot more save chances this year. So I'm going to say he's going to get above that 33.5.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they're going to really lean on him unless, there's some deadline acquisition of like a surefire closer. He's going to get those opportunities.
Yeah.
When rested and when appropriate. All right, one of my favorite over-unders. It's definitely a play on some frustrations that I feel like might be overblown looking at the stats. Bunt rate in 9 years as a manager. In 9 years as a manager, Craig Counsell had a bunt rate of 0.7%. So Craig Counsell early in his career, his first 2 seasons bunted like 1.6% of the time, which is fairly high.
Yeah.
Just so folks know, as a reference point, that is very high. With a lot of people in like that 0.8 to barely over 1 range. After that, it must be an adoption of analytics or maybe a change in the roster. His bunt rate plummeted to 0.5% in 2023, which that is pretty much around where he's been between 0.4% and 0.5% since 2017. David Ross, alleged serial bunter, bunted 1% of the time in 2023. So
oh wow,
that's I guess that's kind of high based on what I was looking at. But he had a career bunt rate of 0.9%. So
okay.
David Ross, bunt machine. So given what we know about Counsell now, would you say his bunt rate in 2024 would be over or under 0.55?
Ooh. So I am actually going to take the over. I think the under makes a lot of sense because, I know he's not a big fan of bunting, but as much as PCA bunted and not sacrifice bunted for hits, I think you might see PCA up this year, and I think you might see him bunt a lot. I think Madrigal is going to probably do some bunting.
As a comment, this is a sacrifice bunt stat. So bunting for hit. Yes,
that's a sacrifice. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and take the under. I retract my statement. I'm taking the under.
That's I figured that would change your mind knowing that very specific piece of information.
Yeah, my gosh, Ross was a 1% on sacrifice. Yes. I mean, I knew it was high, but bro.
Yeah, no, that was so maybe some rightful frustration from Cubs fans. I think the Cubs have played a decent amount of extra inning games. I can't recall if he was one of those who would bunt the guy to third.
Gosh, just
but
hit the ball.
Yeah, if you're the home team, I potentially get it because then you're talking about a fly ball wins the game.
Yeah.
In those extra inning situations, but yeah, I'm not anti-bunt. I think there are situations.
I do too.
Yeah, like especially defensive setup, like some surprise, and I think it's definitely a lost art because it's just not something that happens that much. But yeah, Yes, I think you can. It's like running yourself out of an inning. It's just you better be sure. All right,
hold on. How can you not like the bunt when we see our darling Anthony Rizzo bunt towards when they did the extreme shift down the third base line. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I like the bunt about.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
taking advantage in those situations,
Is fine.
on board.
Yeah.
All right, last over under before we kind of do a MLB projection. And this one is actually one of my favorites because I think this is going to be a key to the Cubs offense. Dansby Swanson, Lieutenant Dans on Twitter, excellent Twitter handle. He had 50 extra base hits in 2023. Yeah, it was 22 home runs, 25 doubles, and 3 triples. His career average of extra base hits is 55. So a little bit of drop off. Not seeing as much power. There has been some discussions about how he's changed some of his swing to kind of stay balanced in the zone. I've seen some comparisons from some folks that have been doing, I believe it was Lance Brodowski that had a kind of side by side of what was different. So I'm hoping he can kind of take advantage of the Wrigley gaps. We see a little more slug from him. So I put the over under line at 54.5.
I'll go ahead and take the under, and that's just going on feeling alone. While I think, he could hit for more slugging, I think right in that 50 mark is where he's going to end up. I don't think he's going to eclipse where he was at. So I'll take the under on that one.
Yeah, I think the Cubs will be in great shape if it's the over.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's a nice surprise. But his defensive floor and what he brings to the roster is good enough for me that I'm not worried about his production. But I would like to see some of that slugging come back.
Mm-hmm.
So let's transition to our last topic and kind of just do a rundown of the major leagues and what we think, the division winners are going to be. And then instead of going through the entire playoffs, we'll talk about who our World Series matchup is and who our World Series winner is. And I'll get started in the NL, and then you can do your NL just after that. So
Cool.
Given the over, I picked on the Cubs. I'm having them win the Central. The East, I just don't think anyone beats the Braves. It's such a complete roster. I think Chris Sale, looking as healthy as he does, adds just another dynamic to a rotation that already has Max Fried and Spencer Strider. So they're going to be nasty. I'm going to take a very weird West pick, and everybody just buckle up.
I'm waiting.
I'm going to take the Giants. I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think
All
their
right.
defensive floor and rotation potential is super interesting. They're not the Dodgers with offense. They are not. But defensively around the infield, they're very strong. Adding Chapman to that lineup, Jorge Soler adds some slugging. They have some interesting young talent. I love the top of that rotation. I think Logan Webb is probably one of the more underrated, meaning I just don't think he's a household name, pitchers in baseball. Love watching him. He's got a great changeup, good sinker, just an innings eater guy, quality start machine. Really love watching him pitch. Adding Blake Snell, they had that, obviously he needs to get healthy. They had that Robbie Ray trade. They have the Harrison kid as well. They could be sneaky good with some really good starting pitching. I think the Dodgers have some solid starting pitching. We'll see what Walker Bueller is, but I think that, that is maybe one of their weaknesses. Their offense is very solid, and the Mookie Betts experience at shortstop, I think will get better as the year goes on. He's a great athlete, but yeah, that'll be something to watch. So I'm gonna take the Giants in the West. So that makes my wild card teams. I'm gonna go Dodgers, Phillies, and then I'm gonna have the D-backs sneak in there. I like their speed. I like their youth. And I do like 3 teams out of that West. Obviously, had a hard time not picking the Padres. I just don't know if they have enough pitching. I think their offense is still pretty solid. Their defense is interesting. But Yeah, I think the D-backs have a little more proven pitching. Eduardo Rodriguez is starting the year injured, which is the big signing for the D-backs in their rotation. So that's a little bit of a downer, but they still have Zach Gallen, who I
Mhm.
think is going to just do Zach Gallen things. MVP, I just don't feel like you can pick against Acuna. I think if he does half of what he did last year, he's still the
I
best
did.
player. Cy Young, I'm going to go Logan Webb. I'm going to ride that Giants high. I think he's going to put together a really good season. He doesn't have to be the only guy for the first time in a few years over there. And I'm going to go just based on stats and opportunity and him being a little more veteran of a guy. I'm going to go Shota Imanaga for Rookie of the Year.
Oh, I like it. I like it. And full disclosure, we did not share this information ahead
Nope.
of time. So Jeff has no idea what I picked and vice versa. So with the East, Braves for all the reasons. I mean, you just can't. I can't
Juggernaut.
find a reason not to have them win
Yeah.
the East. West, I have the Dodgers. I like your Giants pick. I think that's a very sneaky pick, and I hadn't think. You get transactions throughout the year, looking at them, and you never look at them really holistically. What you said makes a lot of sense. I mean, they made some significant additions to a team that has some youth coming up. So yeah, I could totally see it. But the Dodgers, I think, win that, and then obviously the Cubs, they'll win the Central there. For my wild card team one, I have the Diamondbacks. I think one of the underrated ads that they have was Suarez. That's 20 to 30 home run power right there to already an impressive lineup. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Diamondbacks and acting like they weren't even in the playoffs last year. I think that's ridiculous. So they're my wild card team one. I think they could have a chance to take over the West there, but I think the Dodgers just got too much firepower there. Wild card team two, Phillies. They didn't do a whole lot that, in the offseason, but, resigning Nola, adding Merrifield, and just they got that lineup and they have a guy named Bryce Harper. So I think they get one of the wild card spots. And my third one, I think, is going to surprise you. I also have three teams coming out of the West, and it's not the Rockies. It's the Padres. I think they had a very underrated offseason. Matsui and Go from overseas. Peralta, another great addition. Yeah, they lost Soto, but getting Cease, King, Vasquez, and Brito, I mean, they did a good job. And honestly, Jackson Merrill is going to be a stud. And you add him to Tatis, Machado, and Kim. It's just, I like the Padres. I really do. Has that wild card spot three.
Yeah, I think there's really that Padres team was such a shocker for Cease, which has just already added to what I think is an extremely competitive West if you're not the Rockies. So does the team that wins the West, are they the team that beats the Rockies the most?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, with the Dodgers and I just think they're going to beat up on all the teams. I really do. I think they all made great additions, and that West is just stacked. So going to the East, my MVP is not Acuna. It's Bryce Harper. I think he's going to have a huge year. I really wanted to pick Acuna, but I like Harper. Give me a healthy Harper, every day of the week, and we'll have him have the MVP. Cy Young, I have Spencer Strider. I mean, I looked at his numbers; they're just goofy. I mean, 281 strikeouts last year. I think it's 281.
Yeah.
And 20 wins. I mean, wins still matter to voting. Wins are wins. They're fine. But 281. And then my rookie of the year, I already touched on him, Jackson Merrill. I think he's going to hit the ground running. I think he's special. I think he's going to be up all year, which kind of benefits his run for rookie of the year. So that's what I have for the NL. Did you already say who your oh, never mind. We're not going to World Series champion yet. We're not.
No, not yet. We got to do our AL.
Yeah, we got to do the AL. Well, you can't forget about the AL. Do you want to go ahead and take off with it? Or you want me to?
Sure, I'll do my AL.
Okay.
So the Central, I had a real tough time with this. I don't think it's very similar to the NL Central, and in which there's just not, I feel like a team that did a ton. There's a lot of interesting upside in a lot of the division. I feel like the Guardians, generally have solid pitching, but the offense goes, other places, and they still have Jose Ramirez, but it's not the Guardians teams that had, a little better offense. So that might be, a concern. And they generally like try to thread that needle of competing and trading. And, there's some pieces on there that I'm thinking about for the Cubs. So it's in my best interest that they have a bad season. But I'm going to take the Tigers.
Ooh,
I think
yeah.
AJ Hinch is a good manager. That rotation is coming together. They've got Jack Flaherty has looked really solid in spring. So that could be a sneaky good pickup for them. Spencer Turnbull, they've got, a lot of interesting pieces in the rotation. Their bullpen has some gas. Javier Baez is a linchpin. They need him to produce something offensively. They've got still Spencer Torkelson. Riley Green's a very good player. Kerry Carpenter broke out a little bit last year. I think they are a deeper team than they've been. They still have some pieces in the minors to kind of supplement that. So I'm going to go randomly with the Tigers overtaking, the Twins from that division. East, I have a hard time picking against the Orioles. I'm not in love with their rotation. Their bullpen is still pretty solid. Their rotation's better than it's been. They have Corbin Burns, a huge get for them, but it's a very tough East. But I do like the Orioles more than I like some of the other teams. I think the Yankees have a very good roster. It is in some capacity aged. Health is going to be a huge component for them. If Carlos Rodon is healthy and good, that adds to their rotation significantly. Garrett Cole being hurt changes the game a little bit, and he's not going to pitch for a while. So, but that offense in that ballpark, so they could kind of slug their way in. The West, it's the Astros division to lose. Still one of the more complete and consistent teams. The Braves of the AL. They have a very solid lineup. They have a really solid rotation. They have Josh Hader in the back of that bullpen, really solid bullpen that's going to shorten games. They just play a good brand of baseball. So I see them winning that division. Wild card, I'm going with the Rangers only because a lot of their pitching is going to come as the year goes on. They have a lot of guys that are very interesting. Like Scherzer's still hurt, DeGrom's still hurt. I'm not sure if DeGrom's on track for this year. I thought he was. Scherzer's probably second half of the year. So it's really going to be about surviving. They've still have Nathan Eovaldi, who's been, a pretty solid guy for them. Opening day starter for first the Cubs. So it'll be good to see that. Fastball heavy guy, a lot of good fastball hitters in the lineup. So hopefully the Cubs can take advantage of that. But I digress. I'm going to put two more teams from the AL East. I can't pick against the Rays. I feel like they construct a very good team. Obviously, not to bring up uncomfortable situations, but Wander Franco, he is not on that lineup. That he's got a lot of legal issues. Thoughts go out to all those affected by some of the actions and decisions he's made. He's not going to be on that team. Team's a little bit different, but they've got some exciting prospects. They still put together a really good lineup. They do a lot with less. They've got a solid rotation. They're going to miss Sugar Shane McClanahan, but I can't bet against them. Another team to look out for as a trade partner if they do kind of fall off. MVP, I think Juan Soto is going to destroy Yankee Stadium. So I really wanted to take what is weirdly an underdog pick, Mike Trout. That was really, I wanted him to have a resurgent season. Him healthy is good for baseball, but Juan Soto short porch as a lefty in Yankee Stadium. The dude's gonna have a monster season. He's gonna get paid like $1 billion next offseason. So Cy Young, Corbin Burns, and Rookie of the Year. Not a very sexy pick, but I really like Evan Carter out of Texas. So that is my AL.
All right. My AL is the Central. I am actually picking the Royals.
Okay, that was the team I was going between them and the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean Bobby Witt Jr.'s extension. Their ads have been nice. Waka, Lugo, Renfro, and Stratton. They picked up. I think it was Schwerber. And they have a young Anthony Rizzo and Vinny Pasquantino, I think is how you say his name.
Otherwise known as the Pasquatch.
Yeah. But yeah, I have them in the Central. For the East, it's the Orioles. I think that's a team that has Jackson Holiday waiting in the wings, Burns and Kimbrell for pitching. They're going to get there. The West, I have the Rangers. They're a team that I just feel like is going to be in the playoffs year in and year out. I think that's just going to happen.
That offense is insane.
Yeah, it's so good. They're built for the playoffs. They just have a complete team.
Mm.
Hint, 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 Cubs. Hint.
It's weird. They got there by spending money and building a farm.
I know, it's weird. It's weird how that kind of works. Speaking of building a farm and spending some money, Astros, they seem to always be there. I mean, they keep some of their own. They bring other people in. They just seem to always be there. I can't bet against them. So they're my wild card 1. Wild card 2, the Rays. They won 99 games last year. Why do we continue to sleep on them as just baseball fans?
Because they're constructed for the run and not for the short game.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess you're right.
One of the best major league conglomerated strategy teams, but in small sample size alert, the playoffs can do anything. So like playing matchups versus the top pitchers can win you games and lose you games, and they just have not been able to figure out that playoff formula.
And I think you're going to be surprised by my wild card 3 team. I'm picking the Mariners.
Ooh, I like that.
I love the rotation, and I think they're going to add bats at the deadline. I really do, and I don't think they have to really deviate a lot from that rotation. I know Wu is starting the year on the IL, but I mean it's hard not to look at that rotation and say, man, if they can just get in the playoffs. And you're going to have to face Logan Gilbert and George Kirby.
Yeah.
Games 1 or 2. Good luck. Good luck.
And I just don't see Julio Rodriguez struggled at times last year. I don't see that happening again.
No.
I think
Gosh, wow. That was a great segue. MVP Julio Rodriguez. I expect him. Yeah, look at that. I think he's going to do some amazing things for the Mariners this year. I think he's going to take that MVP. Cy Young. I put a futures bet at plus 3,000 odds on this one because I believe in him so much. Logan Gilbert. I think they're going to have the MVP and the Cy Young. And then rookie of the year, Wyatt Langford. I think he seems like as good as any, and he's starting the year on the Rangers. So that's who I have.
All right, I will go with my World Series picks. I am going with the Braves over the Astros.
Wow. All right. And then I need to scroll up in here. I have the Orioles against the Braves. And who do you have as champion?
I have the Braves.
I have the Braves. I don't know how you can pick against them. I just don't know how you can do it.
There's a great article on MLB.com. The Athletic. Not going to give away too much of it. It is a pay-to-play, and you should pay and support journalism. But they did of all the teams in baseball, they did a playoff comp. So they took the team and their win projection, and they put them to a playoff team and made a comp for them. So the Braves comp was the 2016 Cubs. They just projected to run the gauntlet like the 2016 Cubs were, and they did it. And they're like, the Braves are projected to run the gauntlet, and they feel like they're going to do it. And it's just hard. They've got some pitchers in the wings. They've got, they've made some really crafty extensions. They've gotten some players in trades.
Crafty is an understatement.
Yeah.
My gosh. Team deal.
I know he struggled in the spring, but I still feel like he's still young. I feel like Kelenic like could still be something, and that like they got him for
I
nothing.
wanted him.
Yeah, I would have
He-
taken a gamble there if we had room in the outfield, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just hard to pick against the Braves.
Yeah.
Well, this has
It's the
been
Braves.
an especially long episode, but it is, if you're listening to this, it is opening day. So get ready for the Cup game tonight. Listen to our podcast and remember to like, share, subscribe, review, follow us on Twitter, follow our Reddit page. But I do want to, as promised, announce one more thing. I did have a Cub ticket giveaway on Twitter, which I will be doing a few times this season. And the winners are Eric Little, Curtis Arndt, and Kirk Pittman. So if you are listening, please reach out to me. Send me a direct message on Twitter. I will reach out to you by the end of the weekend. I'm going to see if you're listening. And you're going to get 2 tickets to a Cub game of your choice. I'll send you a list and you just let me know which ones. First comes, first answers, first serve. It is the section 330R, row 3, seats 7 and 8. So you're right on the first base side, right over on that overhang. You're in the shade. Great view of the ballpark. Great view of fly balls. It's a nice spot, and they are my season tickets. So I ask each of you to take pictures when you're there, tag us in pictures on Twitter when you get to go, and yeah, just help us promote the podcast. We really appreciate you retweeting our stuff, and have fun at the Cub game. Hopefully you get to play the damn song. But
Yeah.
this is
Play the damn song.
Exist. This has been another episode 8 of Bricks Behind the Ivy. My name, as always, is Jeff Rogalskis, CandidCubs. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere except for OnlyFans, but on OnlyDads. And please join the Reddit community today to make episode suggestions or just get in a conversation with us. Also, I'm a big MLB The Show guy. We'll be scheduling at least 2 streams a month on Sundays to just have chats about the Cubs while doing a Cubs franchise. So look for that. That'll be on Twitch and live on Twitter and YouTube as well. So really looking forward to that. Sean, where can people find you?
You can find me in the club. I love saying that every single time. It's one of my favorite songs. No, you can find me on Hot Stove Cubbies on Facebook and Twitter/X. Also, I'm writing for Northside Baseball, so please go check that out. And everybody, make sure you check out and subscribe and like and all the goodness at Bricks Behind the Ivy. We really appreciate everything. Thank you for 500 downloads. Absolutely awesome. And we look forward to engaging with you all through all the different social media platforms on opening day.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And as a reminder, this is a weekly podcast. I know you guys got a little spoiled there. We had an episode every 2 days, but we will be releasing regularly on Fridays during the regular season. And so keep checking us out every Friday, get a primer of what's been going on. And as we head into another weekend of Cubs baseball, some live content on my TikTok, some live post-game reactions on TikTok and Twitter by Sean, myself, and obviously the MLB The Show streams that will be coming soon. So take a look for that. But thanks so much for listening. See you guys next week.